Hi everybody, it's Mark here. Just thought I'd pop on and finish up a hashtag I started last week when I appeared on this channel, Tarot Stash. Um, and I created a hashtag, a little game that we played, Exercise Your Chords. And we only got to do about a quarter of the game. So I thought I would finish up here and show you all of my picks. So you could do this yourself at home with others, by yourself. It's a really good method for getting you to know, or at least a better idea of what you think of each of the court cards, how you would view them in certain situations, which of course then would help with readings later once you sort of get these ideas in your head and these associations. So the game is you can only pick a card within a suit from the numbers 2 to 10. So in the minors, 2 to 10, you have to pick one card for, let's say, the Page of Wands, one card for the Knight of Wands, one card for the Queen of Wands, and one card for the King of Wands. But the trick is you cannot pick the same card twice between differing court members. So this forces you to narrow things down, to think a little bit harder, to decide are they more this number or should that go to this court? Would that make more sense? But if I've assigned this card, what's left over to make sense for this other card, and so forth. So I know when I did it, I changed my choices more than several times until I sort of locked in on what I thought would be a good representation. So I'm just going to go through them quickly. Some of them I did on the, if you go and you watch that hashtag on this channel, you'll see all of our choices and my particular choices. So I'm going to start with the Wands. So one of the random cards that we picked on the show was the Queen of Wands. So of course there's a lot of minors in the 2 through 10s that you could decide on that might match up with that card. But for me, after sort of weighing the pluses and minuses of the appropriateness of other cards, I decided to go with the Four of Wands for the Queen, because it's a very celebratory card, and I could see her as a wedding planner or a party goer or a party planner, or as I said, a bridezilla or a real housewife, that type of thing. So that's why she got my sort of vote, so to say. Now, let's go to the King. The King, we didn't do this one on the show. So for the King, he's one of the ones I switched up a couple times. Ultimately, I landed on the Three of Wands because I feel that's a very entrepreneurial card, someone that sort of creates their own business, their own thing, their own career, and it just felt very much King of Wands to me, considering I only had the 2, 3, and 5 through 10 to choose from at that point. Then the Knight and the Page, they were a little tricky. I'll go with the Page first. I chose the 8 of Wands to go with that. I think that this has got tons of energy. It's just a go for it. Don't worry about the consequences. Lots of chitter chatter and moving around and playing games and in motion. And I think that's kind of what our page is about. It can be a bit reckless and a bit just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So even though there's really no person in this card, that's what made me, it was a bit of a challenge in choosing it. I still felt this showed the energy of the page better than some of the other cards. Now the Knight of Wands, boy, I changed that one several times because it just depends. Maybe what mode he's in. If he's in a more upbeat, positive, virtuous mode, then I might have picked the Six of Wands, where he's being celebrated and that sort of thing. But I decided he was more likely to get into a bit of a fracas or a fight or even a competitive game. He's just going to really go for it. So I could see him as one of these 5 figures. He could be playing polo if you put the 2 cards together. So anyways, those were my choices for the Wands. So let's move on to the Cups. Now, obviously the 2 of Cups would just fit with any of the court cards in that suit. So it was a matter of elimination of how I landed on the card I wanted to go with it. And I felt that the Knight of Cups was the one that was most likely to be on a quest for love, wanting to woo somebody else, flirtatious, and all those good things. So I chose the Knight for the 2 for the Knight. This one we did on the show. I did pick the 10 of Cups for the Queen. There's a lot to the Queen of Cups, like her mystical side, but I wasn't looking at it so much from that lens. I was just thinking a happy family, a happy community. I just felt she would connect very much to that card. And then I felt the King looks like a pretty satisfied man who's accomplished a lot and is happy in his life. So I chose the 9 of Cups for him. And the Page of Cups, I decided, this is one of the trickier choices I would think, but this is the most dreamy, kind of maybe a little bit out of it, artistic, gullible, naive, all those things. So I picked the 7. I thought if you put him from the back, he could be this guy. He's very dreamy. This looks like a dream, a fantasy. And I feel he may have some difficulty making practical, proper choices. He seems to have picked the cup with the fish in it, which isn't really in the card. Maybe it's under there. But anyway, those were my choices for the cups. On to the swords. We did the Page of Swords on the show, so I picked the 7 because in more older texts on tarot, he's the spy, the traitor, quite sneaky, gathering information and intel and that type of thing. And I thought that went really well with the image on that card. I think this Knight is, when he's at his worst, is the kind of meanest, vilest of the court cards. Obviously, he has his good sides and all that type of thing. But if we're thinking really dangerous and reckless and even maybe sociopathic, I had to pick the 5 of Swords to go along with him. He seems the most likely to have this little sneer on his face. Queen of Swords was an easy pick for me because very often in the old, again, the old tarot books, she's described as a divorcee or a widow. And so I thought naturally she would go with the 3 of Swords. Obviously that's not her whole story, but it worked well for me. This was the hardest one out of this quartz because, as we all know, the swords are the toughest cards. So you don't want to assign a tough card to a court unless you absolutely have to. And we had, what we had, the 9 left over, the 10 left over. Those didn't feel right. The 4 of Swords, just taking repose and rest, didn't feel right. So giving it a certain amount of thought, I came up with the 2 of Swords. And again, the card you choose, it doesn't have to represent the figure themselves, but more like they could have been a part of the scene in the card chosen. And I see him as a decision maker, a judge, a lawyer, someone higher up, a politician, policy maker. And I think he could break the stalemate in the 2 of Swords, help her make the decision that needs to be done. And for things to move forward. So that's where I went with that one. So one last suit, and that is the Pentacles. And I found the Pentacles the easiest by far to line up. So most people on the show picked the Eight of Pentacles, and even in the chat, for the Knight, but I picked the 7, and the only reason being is I thought of the 8 first, but I wanted to assign it to a different card. So that's why this Knight gets the 7. I felt he has the most patience of all the courts, and he would be able to tend to this garden in a very careful, methodical, and prudent way. So having said that, the 8 had to go to the page. The student, the person learning, this apprentice here, learning by doing, that's a very Page of Pentacles kind of vibe. I thought the Queen went very well with this beautifully adorned woman who's accrued a lot of material goods in her lifetime and is living a good life. They really seem in sync, and I could very much see the King of Pentacles as the father in this card, maybe the grandfather here in later years, having set up a dynasty, a home, something solid for his family. So there you have it. I'd be interested to hear what you think would be good associations between the courts and the minors through to 10, or if you feel like you're up to it, do a hashtag on your own channel, and I'd be happy to view it. So that's all for now. I'll see you later. Bye.